miss anything, draw our attention so that we can explain to you. Make sure you get everything right whilst the course is ongoing, because when you start your project, you'll be doing it without your research methods teacher or lecturer. So keep that in mind. With respect to requirements, not anything much, just your attention and the basic skills almost everybody has. Okay, so no special requirements are necessary for this course, but just your readiness and preparedness as a student is adequate here. And the aim is to provide a theoretical and practical assessment of advanced marketing research methods, which has been established. So these are some of the objectives we expect our students to get at the end of the day, to understand the different philosophical underpinnings of business research, understand research process and problem formulation, and determine appropriate research designs given a research problem or formulation, and then design appropriate data collection instruments to collect data to validate whatever research or to evaluate whatever research question you have, and to practically undertake a piece of business research on a company or a brand of your choice, either for your thesis or even at your workplace. Having collected the data, the course is also designed to enable you analyze the data to achieve your objectives or answer your research questions. And then at the end of the day, to be able to put together a research report and professionally report your findings to your target audience. Though we may not engage in actually learning how to write, but understanding your output from the data analysis will serve as a useful guide in producing your research report. So we have our contacts here. You can contact Professor Boso through his line or by email, and then myself also. I have my phone number and then my email as well. All right, so the course expectations. So we will deliver through lectures as we have begun, and then seminar tutorials when we meet face-to-face, okay, where we can put to practice some of the things we learn, okay, we have learned from a theoretical perspective. So for us, with a face-to-face section, we hope to introduce you to some of the data analysis softwares and take you through. The most important thing is to take you through how to analyze the data to achieve standard results to answer your research questions. Okay. All right. So for feedback, you need to submit an assignment which will be graded, and it will constitute 40% of the entire score out of 100. So it is in all of us our interest to participate in that group project, just one, and do it with all seriousness so that you can cushion yourself against the end of SEM exams. All right. So these are essential recommended books for reading. Okay. So you can look at them. We will share this document with you so you can take a closer look at it, and then beyond what we will study in class, you can read these books and it can help you master the course. All right. So course outline, again, it is for our lectures, they are in 5 sessions. Session 1, introduce the role of research in business organization. Session 2, builds on that to look at literature, review, and models. Session 3 looks at research design, how you design your research to embark on the empirical aspect of the research to come out with empirical evidence. And then session 4, having obtained data, how to validate your measures, and how session 5 goes into examining some relationships in your data, purely around the quantitative research area. Okay. So your report, your group assignments is also detailed in this document, which we will share with you. So when you get it, go through and then know that what is required of you in the assignment. For the deadline, it is printed in red, so you cannot miss it. Do your best to meet these deadlines, okay? And then stick within the words requirement, the word count. Just 3,000 words plus or minus 10%. So you can do the calculation and then stick to that. All right. So that is it for the course outline and introduction. Any question from you before we zoom into? So please, if you are not speaking to us, kindly mute yourself. If you are not speaking to us, remember to mute yourself, okay? All right, so any question from the introduction to the course? All right. So we will begin with session 1. Okay. So Vincent, okay, be muted. So please, just to keep the sanity in the class, when you are not speaking to us, kindly mute yourself, okay? All right. Okay, so the aim of this course is to assist you to understand and practice the process of research business, researching business-related problems in a systematic manner. What we mean by systematic is a well-organized, following good logic, okay? Following a systematic approach, a process that can be verified, can be repeated. And then to seek to provide you with the necessary analytical skills you require or you may require to undertake a valid empirical research for business organization. So we will emphasize more on this in the practical session. And then there are varied approaches to undertaking empirical research. We won't be able to exhaust all of them in this course, but we will focus on the most essential, okay? So which means you can take up self-learning beyond what we do in this course to enrich your knowledge and skills in research, okay? All right, so possible software packages that you might use include SPSS, Excel, and NVivo. Excel and SPSS are will be used mostly for the quantitative data analysis, and then NVivo, that is if time permits us, will be used for qualitative. Okay. So it will be best if you start looking at getting some of these softwares onto your laptop so that when it comes to practice and making demonstration examples, we can all follow quickly. All right. So for session 1, we will try to understand the role business research plays in business enterprises, okay? And then why we need to better understand business problems we face today, and then how we can initiate research projects with a strong theoretical and managerial motivation, and then how we can build a strong conceptual framework in our research projects and justify contextual basis for our research. So for the session one we are looking at, we'll try to establish this. All right, the role of research in business organization. When it comes to managing organizations or businesses, decision-making is very key. It is all about taking decisions, strategic decisions, and then operational decisions, and relaying those decisions to the floor workers to execute them on daily basis. Now, one key thing to making decisions is information. If you are not informed, you cannot make good decisions. You may end up making wrong decisions, and that will not end the business well. So decision making is a key aspect of management of in various spheres. And now the backbone of that is information. So if it's information is a backbone for management practice and decision making, then that information must possess certain characteristics. And for practical, hello, Vincent, stay muted, please. You keep unmuting yourself and you distract the class. So let us all put ourselves on mute if you are not speaking to us, okay? Thank you. All right. So in a typical business organization that produces or that engages in buying and selling, you will need business information about customers, your suppliers, distributors, competitors, industry, macro environment, and then in order to make critical business decisions, you need to understand the variables around your business, how they function to affect your business, and how you can leverage on the way these variables act in the business space to achieve certain business goals or targets. So, given the criticality of information for business decision-making and management practice, information that you source from the business should meet certain quality criteria. It should be accurate, it should be relevant, it should be precise, and it should be valid for the business decision that needs to be made. If you want to make a decision about whether to introduce a new product into the market or not, you need information. That decision, you need important information about the market, that is the customers in the market, what their tastes are or what their expectations are, and what your competitors are doing. You may need information about even supplies, because you will need to procure new raw materials or materials to engage in the production of that new product. You will need information to convince management that it is a viable product, in that you can obtain the materials within a reasonable cost and produce them and supply your customers continuously, okay? So you need information, and that information must be accurate, must be relevant, must be precise, okay? And must be valid for the business decision. And it is the reason we conduct research. Business research aims at furnishing management practitioners with the information they will need to undertake any critical business decision. And business research methods is studied so that we can understand the process of inquiry, scientific inquiry, so that we can produce accurate, relevant, precise information so that informed decisions can be made or can be taken based on the research output. So like I mentioned, as we go on, if you have any question, you can use the functions in Zoom to raise a hand, and then you can hear your question and try to respond to you. All right. So the accuracy of business decisions are enhanced when information used to drive such decisions are obtained in a reliable and valid manner. First, the information itself must be relevant, must be accurate, must be timely, must be valid. But to obtain that kind of high quality information, the processes in obtaining that information must be reliable and valid. So managers therefore need valid empirical research to back the accuracy of their decisions. And because of that, we are studying business research methods, which will help us generate such business information to meet the quality criteria we are looking for in such information. Okay, so at the end of the day, relevant, accurate, and timely information that we generate from valid and reliable empirical research will enable business managers to make accurate decisions. The business enterprise they lead will begin to prosper because every decision being made is informed by reliable and valid information. And it goes a long way to ensure that the business prosper and grow. And as the business grows, new jobs are created, new positions are created. In fact, new branches are opened, and then the human society become more successful. I think at the moment, we are suffering with unemployment in Ghana because some of the businesses we saw when we were growing up are still at the level they were when we saw them. They are started in growth. They are not able to expand. Imagine a particular business you saw from your childhood in your community. If that business were to expand, were to grow, to become big and have branches all over the districts and even go beyond your region, if all businesses were to expand and flourish like that in Ghana, we wouldn't have the issue of mass unemployment. So we want you to appreciate the importance of business research. Normally, we say it is more theoretical, but it is to produce information that will enable managers take accurate decisions. And when those accurate decisions are being taken over time, it translates into businesses flourishing, growing and expanding, and creating more job opportunities for the masses, and to help develop a better society. So let's have that at the back of our mind. Anytime we are talking about research and trying to conduct a business research, the goal should be to follow a systematic, scientific, reliable, and valid approach to come out with relevant, accurate, and timely information to foster decision-making. So what this means is that you cannot just undertake research for no reason. It must be taken for a very good cause. It should provide information that is relevant to somebody who can use that information to make a decision that will bring improvement in our lives in general. All right. So with this introduction, what is business research? For it to be valid and reliable, it has to be formalized. So business research is a formalized means of obtaining information to be used in making business-related decisions. And what does this formalized means? So business research becomes part of a critical part of the market intelligence system, because with marketing, you need information about the industry, the market you're operating, the customers, your competitors, and all that to be able to succeed on the market. So when we talk about market intelligence system, business research is a critical component of it. Okay, and it helps management decision-making by providing relevant, accurate, and timely information. Okay, so we now present you with what a more formal definition of a business research. What you need to do is to understand the essence of business research, and the definition will come more naturally than trying to chew it. So based on what we have established, business research becomes a systematic, that is a formalized and objective process of identifying, collecting, analyzing, disseminating information to improve decision-making related to identifying and solving of business problems in business operations. It seems a long sentence, but if you had followed from the beginning, then this long sentence will make much sense to you. In that, business practitioners need to make decision, okay? And not just any decision, but they need to make accurate or informed decision. So in our attempt to improve management decision making, we try to provide them with information. We try to disseminate information that will help them make decisions or improve their decision making. And of course, their decision making is about identifying and solving problems in the business environment. Now, in order for us to be able to provide them with the right kind of information to improve their decision making, we need to undertake a formalized or a scientific or a reliable and valid approach or process to come out with that information, so that that information will meet the qualities we are expecting, which is relevant, accurate, and timely. And to do that, we say we use a systematic because it must follow certain laid down guidelines that is widely or generally accepted, what we normally call the scientific process. And it should be objective, not subjective. It should be directed to achieve a specific goal. And the process includes identifying the right kind of information to collect. And we collect it, we analyze it, and then we communicate. When you have designed a study to identify, collect, and analyze, if you do not communicate the information, research is not complete yet. All right, so that is it for what business research means. What is business research? If you have a question, kindly raise your hand and we will hear you. Now, key functions of marketing research. The two key functions are problem identification and problem solving. It is often said that when you know the problem, then the problem is half solved. If you can define the problem, if you can identify and define the problem, then that problem is half solved. All right, give him praise. You can unmute yourself and talk. Yeah.
I want to ask if the marketing research is the same as the business research.
Yes, we use them interchangeably. Okay.
All right.
Yes, so business research is the bigger basket, and whether we say operations research, supply chain research, or marketing research, or HR research, it all falls in that. Okay. All right. You are seeing this because the material is constantly being revised for different courses. So yours is business analytics, okay? That is how come you see differences in the labeling, but it is the same thing, okay? All right. So the need for decision-making arises because in most cases, there is a problem. And problem is broad. A problem can be something which is against us that we need to get rid of, or something which is opening an opportunity for us. So when we say problem in the context of research or business research or marketing research, it takes a very generic meaning. It could be something that is not desirable that we want to get rid of, or an undesirable situation that is creating an opportunity for exploitation. Okay, so what business research help us achieve is to, one, define or identify that problem more clearly and define it. And business research could be conducted purposefully to resolve that problem. Okay, so decision making are about resolving issues or taking a stance against something or with something or an issue or a phenomenon. So for instance, you are operating a supermarket or a shopping mall. You have all the goods that customers may demand or may need, but customers aren't buying. The month has just ended and you are not seeing customers flowing in to buy. Can someone help me? This scenario I have just painted, is it a problem? If it is not,
Yes, it is.
it is. Okay, who agrees and disagrees? You're operating a supermarket. You have everything, it is well stocked, but customers aren't buying. The month too has ended. You would say, oh, in the middle of the month, people don't buy. When the month ends, they'll come. The month has just ended. You are not seeing customers flocking in. There is a problem. The problem is not the customers not buying. That is the symptoms of the problem. That is the outcome of the problem. There is something fundamental causing customers not to buy. So the obvious outcome you see is that customers are not buying. Our sales have gone down. That is not a problem. That is the symptoms of the problem or the outcomes of the problem. You have malaria parasite in you, and it is causing fever in your body, and you're exhibiting symptoms of fever. There is a problem that is causing the symptoms you are seeing. So what you see makes you go to the physician for a solution. And what they will do is to diagnose what the cause is. Is it a malaria parasite? Is it something else before they can apply a solution? So what we normally see in the business environment are usually the manifestation, the outcomes of the problems. The problems are usually hidden. They are not so obvious. So with this supermarket or shopping mall manager, the question would be, why? What is the reason? Why are customers not buying? Okay, so you need to now find out why customers are not buying. Since it is not so obvious the reason why customers are not buying, their intentions or their reasons for not buying is not a label on them. Okay, it is not labeled on their faces or at the back of their chest, so you cannot read. That calls for research. That calls for market research, a business research, to identify the reason behind they not buying. So that is one way, one key function of business research. And the other is solving the problem. Having identified the problem, perhaps the reason could be that your sales staff are not welcoming. They are unprofessional. Or maybe your pricing, or maybe something had happened. Maybe one of your managers had done something in the public that has placed created a bad image for your shop. That is why people are not coming, despite the fact that it is well stocked. So the problems are usually hidden. It is the outcomes we normally see. Okay, Stephen. Hello, Wache. You can unmute yourself and speak to us. Stephen Wache.
Oh, yeah. Sorry, I was muted. Please, can you hear me now?
Yes, please.
Yeah. I was going to ask that do we embark on or do we do the research to identify the problem, or we do the research to solve the problem, or there are different research? You can do a research to identify the problem, and you can do a research to solve the problem.
All right. Thank you very much. Thank you. So if you listen from the beginning, I mentioned that when you identify a problem, the problem is how solved. Okay. So even identify the problem in itself is a substantial reason to initiate research. So yes, research can be done just to identify the problem. Research can be done just to explain the problem more clearly for us to understand the reason we are seeing the outcome we are seeing. So given the example I gave, customers are not buying. That is not the problem. That is the manifestation or the consequences of the problem, okay? Just like if you have malaria parasites, you get fever. The fever is just a manifestation of the presence of malaria parasite activity in your body, okay? So research is done to identify what is causing the outcome you are seeing, because it is usually not obvious to the eye, okay? You will need to undertake a systematic process, scientific process, to identify, collect information or data about the issue, analyze, and then come out with some findings, and then you communicate to managers. Customers are not buying because of A, B, C, D reasons. That A, B, C, D reasons were not known to the managers when they only noticed that customers were not buying. It takes research effort to do that. So that's why we are saying one of the functions of business research is to define or identify business problems. Okay? And then another key function is to solve. Although a research can be conducted both to identify and solve. Okay? Sometimes identifying the problem alone is one step that is necessary to be taken, and that can be done through research. Having identified the problem and bringing our understanding to the problem well, research can also be done again to solve the problem. So yes, Stephen, research can be done to do either of the two or both of the two. One thing you need to understand about research is that it's about knowledge building. And with knowledge we build, it is step by step, it's incremental. Unlike Kwaku, no single individual has all the answers. Okay, so in order for research work to be well focused, when the identifying the problem and solving it is so a huge thing, it's so demanding, it can even disorient, or it can even confuse the research team. So usually it becomes necessary to break them into stages, where the first stage of the research can be to identify the problem well, so that we are well informed about why customers are not buying, and all the dynamics around the why they are not buying. Then the next question management will put forth is, so how do we deal with it? Okay, and that one can also be another substantial research, looking for the solutions, how to go about resolving that problem. So yes, research can be done just to identify the problem or define it, or solve a problem, or do both. Okay, all right. So designing a research to either identify or solve the problem depends on what question is being asked, okay, by management. So there is always a specific objective. If the question is, why are customers not buying, then you want to find out the reason. If the question becomes, how do we get, or how do we increase our sales from now? Then the question is about what? The research quest will now be about solving the problem, okay? All right. So managers can have issues like that they will need systematic research to solve such objectives. Some of these issues can be relationship between quality enhancement and customer satisfaction. What is the relationship between enhancing the quality of our products and the extent to which our customers become satisfied of our products or our services? What is the understanding of our business environment, the ever-changing business environment? Business environment keeps changing, okay? How to understand how they are changing, the trajectory of change in the business environment, what kind of effect is going to have on the business we are running in that environment, becomes questions managers will ask that will demand research. Think about it. We used to hear of global warming from a very far distance. Now it is getting to us. It is changing how business is being conducted. It is partly affecting how we even deliver lectures. We have spared the classrooms. We have spared the burden of traveling, and we are all in our houses, and yet we are having a class online. Think about the automobile industry. How changes in the environment is changing even automobile technology, moving away from the internal combustion engines technology, burning on fossil fuels now to electric energy and even hydrogen gas. So what happens around the environment? The environment is constantly changing. Understanding how these changes occur, what they are likely to lead us into in the future, and how that will even affect the business becomes some questions managers usually ask. Identification of a new market opportunity. You are growing. You need to make more money than you are doing. How do we achieve that? How do we expand the business? To where? Which market will be appropriate? International? If international, which region? Which country? Okay. If it is local, which regions? Okay. So these are some of the typical questions managers might ask. Can you also add your voice to this? What are some of the typical questions managers may ask that will demand or warrant the need to conduct business research to resolve such issues? Like I said, this is a very practical course. If you understand it, your benefit is in double folds. You will sweat in exams, and two, you will find it easy when you are writing your thesis. So let's do a little talking here, brainstorming here. Can anyone give me one or two examples of questions that managers may raise that will warrant the need to conduct business research? You can raise your hand and then unmute yourself to speak to us. All right, Nene.
Okay, so good afternoon. So
Good afternoon.
I'm just giving a scenario.
Okay.
So you have a neighborhood where there are about 50 shops.
Okay.
Then you have a product you sell, and then your product is present in only, let's say, half of the shops. Meanwhile, you have competition products in all the other shops.
Okay.
And then you may need to find out why your product is not present in all the other 50 shops.
Oh, okay. So that means you are either a wholesaler or a distributor, and
you
find out that the retail shops. Yeah. Okay. All right. That's great. So you have seen the effect. The effect is that your product is not in some of the shops. Why? The question is why. Yeah. So that will be problem identification, and then definitely you will want to resolve it, and then that will become all right. So there's another hand up. So Nene can mute yourself, and then the other hand, you can speak to us. That is Nanama. Yeah.
Okay, I was thinking of assuming you are an HR manager, you can look at organizational culture and staff attrition.
Okay. That's great. So you look at how maybe the problem might be that so help us, Nana. What is the outcome of the problem, the consequence of the problem? Something is happening. The outcome is that there is staff attrition, right?
Yes.
Yes. And you want to understand, and you know, as a HR manager, you know it's a behavioral issue, and you suspect that organizational culture or the cultural environment of the organization, of the business, may have given root to this kind of issue. So, but you are not sure yet. You need to conduct a research to substantiate that relationship, that indeed the kind of culture we have created can perhaps lead to employee attrition. Okay. All right. So to substantiate that, thinking, you need data. You need to conduct business research to come up with that findings. Okay. So you will need information about different kinds of organizational culture. So that means you will study multiple organizations, including your own, and then see how the different culture in various organizations is related with employee attrition in each of those organizations. So that at the end of the day, you can say that organizations whose culture looks like ours face similar problems, and those whose culture is contrary to ours face less of employee attrition. So you recommend to management that if we can solve this problem, then let us model our business culture after maybe one of the best models you identify from your research. So that is excellent. Okay. So as we move on, now the process. If you remember what you studied in integrated science from SHS and all that about the scientific process, it follows us all the way into business as well. So you need to define a problem, identify and define what the problem is. So with the example I gave initially, customers are not buying. So the problem is that sales have gone down. All right. The next step is to develop an approach to the problem. And this has to do with coming out with logical arguments from your knowledge in literature to clearly beef up the research problem. And the next step is to design a research where you determine how you are going to collect specific data to analyze and to come to a conclusion about the problem you have defined. Having designed that, so designing means you go to the drawing board, you sit on a table to plan, strategize. What data will I need? So taking Nana's example, organizational culture is one of the important variables you need to collect data about. And then employee attrition is also another variable you need to collect data about. Who do you collect that kind of data from? Okay, employee attrition, organizational culture. Employees reside in the organization, so okay, then the source of my data will be organizations. So when I go to the organizations, I'll be asking questions that elicit the nature of the organizational culture in that organization. And then I'll be asking the HR managers questions that elicit the presence or the prevalence of employee attrition or something like that. So you need to sit down and design what questions to even ask. How should the question be put to capture these phenomena we are going to collect data on, right? Who am I collecting the data from? How am I going to identify them and reach them? And even when I've obtained the data, how am I going to analyze them? You think about all that in the design stage, okay? Then when you have obtained the data, you prepare and you analyze the data. And when you have analyzed the data, you now prepare a presentation or a report to the decision makers or your audience or to your supervisor if it's a thesis. All right. So the research problem definition and approach development. Okay. So research begins with the recognition of a problem or an opportunity to investigate. So if you remember what I said initially, when we say research problem in general, it can be something we want to avoid. That is a problem, real problem, or an opportunity. Okay, COVID-19 was a problem, but it also created opportunity. So we can call it generically a problem. So that is it. So we do not just undertake research for just researching sake, but there should be a problem at hand, an issue at hand that needs attention. Somebody must be interested in it. So when you are about to embark on your thesis, they ask you to submit research topics for review. Some of the usual thing you hear is that, what is the problem? What is the problem in this topic? Who cares about it? In other words, who will pay to get that information? And people will only pay for things that is very valuable to them. So in other words, what we are asking you is that, what is the value of the issue you want to discuss or you want to research into? So you must first recognize a need for that problem. Somebody must need the information or the solution to that problem critically before you can embark on research. So business managers may face a lot of problems that will make them have a lot of questions, just as we asked from the beginning. Why are customers not buying? Why are our sales down? Why are we facing employee attrition in our company? So many sort of questions. So let's examine some of the examples we have in our slides here. Do we have to change our supply chain partners? That would be a manager's question. There is a problem, and the manifestation has come to the notice of management, and management is asking, so do we change our supply chain partners? For example, there is shortage of a product, and it's all because there is a disruption in your supply chain, and your suppliers are not supplying the quantities you need, and you are facing shortage in the market. So your sales manager comes, why are we not having product ABC? You say, oh, the suppliers could not supply all the quantities we requested for. Now the question is, so do we change them? Should we change them? Do we just change our suppliers? It is a simple question that seems to suggest a simple answer. Yes, no. But a research-oriented person will say, wait, it depends. It depends on what? Let's examine our supply chain partners first and know who to fire and who to keep. A manager will also ask, do we need to alter our business strategy? And if so, how? Do we need to? That is a problem definition. There should be a reason why we need to change. And if we need to change, how? And that becomes a solution kind of research. So in the second question, it is a pregnant research, a typical managerial question that will call for both a research to answer whether we should change or not, and then how we should go about the change, okay? So managers' questions are managers need scientific answers to the how, the why, the when kind of questions they have. And these questions must be translated into a research tongue, a research language, okay? So that you can use a scientific or systematic approach to come out with the responses or answers to those managerial questions. Now, since we only see the symptoms or the outcomes of typical business problems first, that leads us to ask managerial type of questions as we saw from the previous slides. Before you even embark on business research, it normally calls for an initial exploration to understand the business problem or opportunity clearly, so you can define the problem as an initial research before you can go further to carry out a more depth research to resolve the problem. Okay, so while you have been given a business question, a managerial question, a managerial problem to deal with, initially you need to explore around, to ask more questions about the problem, to ask more questions that will make you, the business researcher, understand the problem well, why the question is being asked. So that calls for you doing your background checks and analysis to understand the context of the problem. I started by saying that, asking the question, why are sales down? Sales are down. Sales can be seen from two perspectives: quantity sold or sales in terms of value. Okay, so as if a manager poses the question, why are our sales down? Then it behooves on you, the business researcher, to understand even the context of sales used in that question. What is he talking about? Is it the quantities sold, or is it the value of the money from the items sold that is referring to? Both may present different problems. If it is a value, it could be that we have sold so much, but just items that have low value. If it's about the quantities, then we know we have a problem because the products are simply not moving, okay? And if they are not moving, under what condition, what season do we find ourselves in? Is something happening within the community, the nation, or the continent that is all happening in the economic, in the banking sector, with people's jobs, okay? Or are there some occasions, festive occasions happening that is drawing the buyers to a different community or a different location that is causing our sales to come down? So it calls for discussions with the decision makers, interview with industry experts, secondary data analysis. Sometimes you can obtain certain statistics, data about certain economic factors within the country or within that industry that is perhaps having a bearing on the problem being asked or being faced. Okay, so sometimes it might call for a qualitative research, a focus group discussion with people who have in-depth knowledge about the issue, so that you can understand the problem broadly or the issue more broadly before you even begin to commit resources into investigating the problem proper. So what we are saying here is that in identifying the business problem well, you may need an initial exploratory exercises by engaging people who are associated with the problem, or if it's a decision, who are associated with the decision, to understand the dynamics of the issue at hand. That is what, for instance, let me take, you are sick, you are feeling a fever, and you go to the hospital. The initial thing the doctor, the nurses do is They take your temperature, they take your blood pressure, all those things. Those are initial explorations. Then they will send all that to the medical doctor. When you go for consultation, they begin to ask, what did you say is wrong with you? Then you begin with your symptoms. Then they may ask, does it happen this way, that way? Is it always throughout the day or certain times in the day? They are trying to initially explore around to understand the symptoms you are facing well, so that they can narrow down to a few tests they must do, okay, to identify the real cause. So it's a similar thing we do here. You have been put a management or a business problem. The first thing is to do is to explore around the problem to understand how the symptom is being manifested by speaking to experts, decision makers, and by collecting initial data, secondary data sources from the industry, from the macroeconomy or macro level, to understand why, or to just to have a broad knowledge about the problem, so that you can now narrow down your attention where to commit resources to conduct your business research. All right. As we go on, if you have a question or if you have a point to make, you can raise your hand and then you can speak to us. All right. In analyzing the business environmental context through exploratory activities, okay, it will help you understand the environmental context of the research problem and opportunity. So that is it. So sometimes it might even go beyond organization to include a PESTEL framework we normally study in business management and strategy, okay? So this may include past information, resource and constraints, buyer behavior, legal, environment, economic, technological, and industry dynamics, just as we just talked about not long ago. Okay. So at this point, we need to be able to distinguish between a business decision problem and a business research problem. Sometimes one way of diagnosing a business decision problem, it might suggest an answer like yes or no. Okay. So a simple yes or no sometimes it just suggests that on the face. So for instance, should a new product be introduced? What would be the answer? Yes or no. But a business research approach to this management problem will be, it depends. So to determine consumer preference and purchase intention for the proposed new product. Let's take this again. Management asks, should we introduce or should we produce a new product? Should we introduce a new product to the market? What it means is that if management are to introduce a new product, then they have an idea what product to introduce. For instance, you are operating a food canteen in Ashanti, where you know we can eat fufu in the morning, in the afternoon, in the evening, and sometimes even in the night. So we love fufu. And management is considering introducing a new product, which is neat fufu, which is not pounded, but will be stirred on the stove. Now, the question is, should we introduce neat fufu in our market in Kumasi? Now, a typical business translation of this problem will now be to determine consumers' preference and purchase intention for the proposed neat fufu. Because to answer yes or no, you must know whether should that new product be introduced, will customers patronize it? Will they buy it? Those are the questions you will have to ask yourself before you rush to answer yes or no. You need to answer those questions first. And those are the questions a business research will answer. So that having answered those questions carefully, you can now go to management and say, yes, let's introduce it. Why? Because our analysis from the market shows that consumers are already tired with pounding. They're going through the process of pounding cassava and the plantain to produce food. And sometimes when you see the pounding guy sweating and wiping the sweat and the sweat dropping into the withdraw and all that, we don't want it. If it is my home, I don't mind. If it is public, I don't want it. So when it comes to food vending, when it comes to operating a food joint, then Need Fufu will sell in the public. Or we are so traditional, we want it pounded. That is when we feel we are eating real fufu. So if you introduce anything like Need Fufu, it is not fufu. It might be called anything else, but not fufu. So you get to understand what customers' preferences are. And you get a good basis for saying a yes or a no to the managerial question whether to introduce a new product. Now let's look at a second example. I would like somebody to help us analyze the second example. Should our suppliers be changed? Its corresponding business research problem is to determine the effectiveness of our current suppliers. So can someone help us explain why, from the research perspective, we are not answering a yes or no question directly, but determining the effectiveness of our current suppliers? Can someone just help us to, just like I did with the first one? I want to know if you are following and you are getting the logic along. So anyone to try? I don't want to be a lone talkative. So anyone to try? And someone too can be preparing for the third one. Okay. Yao, my name. Go ahead.
So probably I'm thinking of it like in the business, we were expecting some deliveries from some supply chain, some suppliers, and
Yes.
then it delayed. And because it delayed, the managers are trying to figure out, okay, do we need to really change the suppliers or something like that? In my yes, there might be a problem, a bottleneck somewhere, which might not be because of the ineffectiveness of the current suppliers.
Exactly.
So just answer yes or no will probably not be the effective solution. Actually going to research within the problem that what caused them, our current suppliers, to be ineffective, or what caused the shortage, or the non-deliverable, might help us answer whether our current suppliers are still the best option or we really need to go in for another person, which brings us to the research.
Exactly. That's wonderful. Can someone do justice to the last one for us? Another person, different person. So yeah, you can drop your hand. Thank you for your submission. Please, let's try. Let's make this class very interactive. The answers you produce will be the answers you will produce in your exam, so I'm telling you. And the knowledge you get here will be the knowledge you will apply in your research. So let's try to participate in everything. So can someone also try to explain the third example here? Should the price of the brand be increased? Oh, yes, let's increase. No. But what is the basis for yes and no? How can we coin a research problem to resolve this issue? And it is to determine the price elasticity of demand and the impact on sales and profit of various levels of at various levels of price changes. Yes, for some products, when you increase the price, it might increase the prestige attached with the product, luxurious products. Okay, and that means customers, if the target is wealthy people, they will like to associate themselves more with such products. There are certain products that are also inferior. When their price go high, there is high demand for them. I think they are called different goods in economics, like Gari and Kokonte. When Gari and Kokonte price goes up, it is no longer a poor man's food. So all the rich can boldly buy and eat gari and kokonte because it has gained value. So it is no longer associated with the poor. But there are some products, when you increase the price, the general demand theory will say the higher the price, the lower the quantity demanded. So you must know to what extent customers will react to any price change and how that will affect your profit. And understand something. When you increase price, generally, quantity demanded might reduce. But the number of people who resign from consuming the products and the value of sales you lose from them compared to the increase in profits you get to those who continue to buy needs to be analyzed. That is why in a research-wise, the question is put this way: to determine first the price elasticity of demand. Not just that, but also the impact on sales. Not just sales, but also profit at various levels of price change. So a research question would be like it has been coined here, so that you now say that it is not just about increasing the price or reducing the price. You must understand how increasing the price will affect consumers' behavior, that is price elasticity, how it will affect our sales volume, not just volume, but in terms of profit at each of the prices we are thinking of varying our product first. Then when we have gained this in-depth information from the market, then we can boldly face management and say, yes, let's increase the price, but up to this level. Beyond that level, it will be detrimental. Oh no, let's reduce the price, but not beyond this price level. Beyond that level, you'll be making losses. So that is it for. All right. Now, there are errors in defining problems. Okay, and the common errors are two extremes. Either the problem is too broad such that you don't know your boundaries, and it does not provide guidelines for subsequent steps. A typical example is saying, improving the company's image. How? In what sense are we improving the image? The image of the company can take so many faces. Okay. Now, a product can also be too narrow that it is too simplistic that you are missing certain details. So, for instance, changing price in response to competitors' price change. Because competitors have changed price, let us also change price. So we are just copying our competitors. Do we know why they change price? Maybe their commodities are nearing expiry and they want to clear them, so they reduce price. Because of that, you too reduce price for the commodities you have just gone for last week, and they have a longer shelf lifespan. So your competitor, the question you will ask yourself when this question is put, changing prices in response to competitors' price change, will be that, why are competitors changing the price? So you are missing those details, all right? So it is a bit difficult, but not unsurmountable. When you work your way around the research problem, you can define it fittingly, not too broad and not too narrow, okay? And even when you have defined it a little broad, you should be able to break it down into specific questions. Okay, so we will look at that as we move on. All right. So when we have clearly defined a research problem, we make a more broad statement which captures the components of the problem. You look at examples. So This is a typical broad statement for a research. How can an interplay between supply chain collaboration and customer-oriented behavior help enhance operational efficiency? We have words like how, can, and. Let's forget about them. A key word here is interplay. Okay? And then the next keyword is supply chain collaboration. Another keyword is customer-oriented behavior. We have enhance, and then operational efficiency. This is a pregnant statement. How can the interplay between supply chain collaboration, 1, customer-oriented behavior, 2, help enhance operational efficiency, 3? So when you take this statement, it has 3 concepts that it is examining: supply chain collaboration, customer-oriented behavior, and operational efficiency. Look at this keyword, interplay between this and that to enhance operational efficiency. We can break this down into smaller or more direct or more specific research questions, such that when we put them together, we will come back to the same big research question. What we can deduce from here is that supply chain collaboration may have or may influence or not operational efficiency, and also customer-oriented behavior may influence or not operational efficiency because of the word interplay and enhance here. By the construction of this sentence, we can deduce that supply chain collaboration and customer-oriented behavior can be seen as a sort of input or ingredients to influence operational behavior efficiency. Only we do not know for sure. So we are asking that, can you put together a chicken and rice to make jollof rice or to make a sumptuous meal? So what this means is that we have some ingredients, and the ingredients clearly here become supply chain collaboration and customer-oriented behavior. And then the sumptuous meal as the outcome will be like operational efficiency. So since we do not know exactly how their interplay will enhance the outcome, we can begin by breaking this broad statement into smaller pieces. 1, how does customer-oriented behavior impact supply chain collaboration? Even the ingredients can have influence on each other. Yes. Just as you can put saltpeter in okra stew to make it more sticky. All right. Another possible smaller or specific question we can examine from this broad statement is, how does customer-oriented behavior influence operational efficiency? 3rd, how does supply chain collaboration influence operational efficiency? And lastly, we can ask a more complex but specific question, which is, how does supply chain collaboration intervenes in the relationship between a company's customer-oriented behavior and operational efficiency? So all these 4 children are coming from this. Remember the word interplay. The word interplay is giving birth to research question 1. Said that supply chain customer-oriented behavior can predict or can have an influence on supply chain collaboration. Now, the word enhance gives birth to at least 2 possibilities where supply chain collaboration enhances operational efficiency, or customer-oriented behavior enhances operational efficiency. That is 2 and 3. Now, putting the interplay and the enhance together, we can also have the statement, the fourth statement, where we are saying that customer-oriented behavior will first drive supply chain collaboration, which in turn will also drive operational efficiency. So we are looking at the interplay here and positioning supply chain collaboration as a betweener, or more professionally, what we call an intervening variable, or what we call a mediator variable. It comes between 2 variables. It becomes a mediator. When a variable is situated between 2 other variables, and there is a causal path through it, we call it a mediator. We'll come to the specifics of these, but I'm just mentioning them in passing. So that gives a chain where customer-oriented behavior here will first have to lead to supply chain collaboration, and then from supply chain collaboration, then to operational efficiency. And that is what we call the indirect relationship. So the betweener, or the mediator, or the intervening variable called supply chain collaboration comes between customer-oriented behavior and operational efficiency. So we are questioning whether supply chain collaboration actually plays an intervening role between customer-oriented behavior and operational efficiency. Any question at this point? Any question? Because when you are giving a broad statement like this, you should be able to craft more specific questions like these from it. In your research, when you are conducting thesis, you'll be expected to state a broad objective and then specific objectives, which will also be translated into specific research questions. That is what we are looking at here. Any question or any comments? Any? Okay. If there isn't any, yeah, go ahead.
With the broad statement, please, can you go back to that? With the broader statement, until you explain it, I was thinking that per layman's point of view, the supply chain collaboration and the customer-oriented behavior both will influence or enhance operational efficiency. But for the specific underlying questions, I didn't see as such. The last one depicts.
Yeah, I get you. So go ahead.
The last one looks like the supply chain rather will have will have influence on the customer-oriented behavior and operational efficiency. I was hoping that we can also generate a specific question whereby the supply chain collaboration and customer-oriented behavior will both have influence on operational efficiency.
Yes, that's very true. So what it means is that this illustration we are using, the specific questions are not exhaustive. Okay, so this is one researcher's perspective how to look at it, by positioning or producing a mediation problem, a sequential problem, where he thinks that customer-oriented behavior would drive the company to engage in supply chain collaboration, okay, which in turn will drive operational efficiency. Okay, so what you are saying too is valid. It can also be an alternative way of looking at the problem, where you say that, especially using the word interplay here. Interplay can mean the mediation we just talked about, the sequential arrangement of these three concepts, okay? It could also mean that a collective synergistic effect of supply chain collaboration and customer-oriented behavior can drive operational efficiency, just as you mentioned. And that way of formulating a research question is what we call a moderation or interaction term, where you expect synergy, okay? So here you see that even in these specific questions, we acknowledge that customer-oriented behavior, the second one, can influence operational efficiency. And the third one, supply chain collaboration can also influence operational efficiency. Now, in place of this one, in place of the fourth one, you could have put your question, okay, your research question, which is how does customer-oriented behavior and supply chain collaboration integratively influence operational efficiency? You are proposing a synergy. Each of them can drive operational efficiency, but what happens when we bring both together? What happens when we join them together? That is another perspective of looking at research, making contribution in research. So it can take the form of an intervening variable or a mediation problem, just as presented in this specific example, or you could turn the tables to what you were talking about to bring a joint, a synergistic problem here, where you are thinking that both supply chain collaboration and customer-oriented behavior can jointly drive operational efficiency. So your question can be, how does supply chain collaboration and customer-oriented behavior jointly drive operational efficiency? So your observation is valid. And
okay, thank you.
Yeah, all right, thank you. Okay, so in summary, problem definition goes with coming out with a broad statement and breaking them down into specific research questions that can be addressed with data. And the next step is an analytical framework. And it has a lot of components here: research question, research hypothesis, and specification of information needs captured under developing the research approach. But you see that they kind of overlap. When you look at the right-hand side, problem definition and approach development, and you look at the brackets on the left-hand side, you see that they tend to overlap. Research is iterative. When you come to searching information and literature, you might go back to even update your research problems components, okay? So that is just a mind map to guide us through our lectures. Remind me when it's time for break. Me, I'm a talkative. When are we supposed to go for break? Hello, Rep.
3 o'clock.
Break for break. When are we supposed to break for break? Take a break. Pathology.
3 o'clock.
Is that?
3 o'clock.
Okay. All right. So so we will do this in the next session. So let me just load that slide and then we continue. Okay. Let me pull down this. Oh, yeah. Okay. If there's no question, we'll just go straight ahead to this. All right. So session 2 is about reviewing the literature and developing theory. This is what we coined or we termed in the research process as the approach development. So just note that we are just following the business research processes. Okay, so why do we need theoretically robust research projects? You have identified the problem. You have made your broad statement. You have made your specific questions. Now the question is, why do we need theory to back our research? That is the approach development. You need to root or firmly ground the research problem in literature, in theory. Theory is nothing but a logical lens, okay? A logical lens. All right, we will talk more about theory as we go forward. Hopefully, our mentality about theory will change from this session. Okay, so what do we mean by theory itself? How do we initiate research projects with a theoretical contribution? How do we build strong theoretical or conceptual frameworks in our research projects? But before we even continue, let me just take the opportunity to clarify this. Business research can take two forms, okay? It can be an action or, an action research, okay? Where we are conducting the research to solve a real life business problem. In that case, we do not intend to make theoretical contribution. Something is happening. We just want to address it. So a real business problem, we can just conduct a business research to resolve that problem. That is a more direct sort of research that does not seek to add to knowledge. It is so practical, seeking to resolve a problem at hand in the real world. Now, the more general application of research is about theoretical contribution. Even though it will end up solving a real life, it might end up contributing to solving a real life problem. It normally focuses on making theoretical contribution, adding to our way of reasoning about things. And for most of the academic ones we do, and as we are learning from this class, we will seek mainly to make a theoretical contribution which also have practical relevance. So I believe what we are doing here has much impact in the sense that it helps us build on knowledge, and at the same time, that knowledge will have practical usefulness, okay? So there are times in your organization, you may have conducted a research to solve a practical problem in the organization, but the approaches to solving that problem is not new. In that case, there is no theoretical contribution. And there are times you conduct research to address business issues that changes how we even think about certain issues within the in management practice. In that case, we say you are building on knowledge. You are making a theoretical contribution. You are improving our logical reasoning, ways of making conclusions, ways of thinking about issues around us, and ways of going about solving problems around us. So we will delve much into this in this session. So the starting point of the academic research exercise is what we did in the initial session 1, identifying the problems, okay, or the gaps. And how do you even identify them well? Remember, we said you do an initial exploration. Under the formal processes of conducting business research, you now need to do a more detailed exploration of existing knowledge, which we call literature, to firmly establish the problem and the need to solve it. So again, let me remind you, when you begin your research thesis, your supervisor is most likely to ask you this question when you present your research problem. That's your chapter 1. They will ask you, what is the gap in literature? What is literature saying? The fact that there is a managerial problem doesn't mean we should conduct a research. Always. Sometimes people have already conducted research on that problem before us. So the solution is only lying there. Just go and take it and apply. If that is the situation with our research problem or our managerial problem, then it doesn't need or it doesn't warrant conducting scientific research again. Just pick the suggested solution from existing research and apply it. So, in the kind of inquiry we are studying about, you will be expected to review existing knowledge to convince us that indeed the issue has not been clearly addressed, or even if addressed, not completely addressed, such that we need to do more about it so we can enhance our understanding about the problem. That is what calls for our attention in literature. Okay, so let's zoom into it. What is literature review? It is not just a summary of research or bibliography, not a historical account of years of reading or years of research or your reading efforts. Literature review is an argument you are building. You are trying to tell us what we know. If it is just what we know, then it will become a summary of past research. No, it goes beyond what we know about the issue, but your analysis of what we know, we think we know, to reveal what we don't know. And even what we think we know, how we may have missed the point. Let me see. Let me see if I can use an example here. Let me use COVID-19, the outbreak of the virus. Because we did not know much about it, the initial name that came was the Chinese virus. We thought because it the outbreak of it started from Wuhan, China, then we just label it Chinese virus. Some of the notions we started getting was whether the virus was in the Chinese genes or whatever. That is how come the name Chinese virus. But when we begin to study it, then we realize it has nothing to do with a particular race, but it has to do with a virus we have known that has been mutated and also has taken a different shape and it's affecting us in a different way. Then we begin to learn that we did not initially even know how it spread from one person to the other. Okay, then it takes research to learn about how it is transmitted from one person to the other. Then we realize we don't even know how we can even bring this virus under control. Then it takes another research to come out with the possible vaccines to deal with this virus, starting even with certain medications that can help reduce the activity of the virus in the human body. So that is what we do in literature. We read those who have researched around the topic, not just summarizing what they have said about it, but critically analyzing the context in which they studied it. The focus they look at, how that focus is narrowing our understanding about the whole problem and the need to go beyond what current research has done. So it is not just a summary of what has been done, but your analysis of how it was done, whether it is comprehensive enough, what has not been done right, even the methodology used, is it right in the first place? Or is it appropriate? Okay, it applies in the West. Does it apply in the global South like us? Oh, it applies in the among or in the midst of the affluent. Does it apply in the midst of developing and low economic countries? Those are the questions you begin to ask, and that is how your analysis of the literature should be done to take shape. Yes, yeah, you can go ahead.
So kindly go one step back to the previous slide.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so you mentioned that we need to identify the gaps, whether there is a need for the research. In our world of information, people might have done some of the research and sometimes it's locked. You might not get access to it. How do you then suggest we will be able to look at all the gaps in the research that has been done to decide whether there's a need for our research or not?
Okay, thank you for the question. So that one is a bigger problem than beyond the class. But so what we do in a world that is seeking or is hungry for progress, what we do is we share knowledge. But it is rather unfortunate on our part. Sometimes our access to some of this information is limited. Okay, so even for those who daily engage in research to contribute to knowledge and all that, it is a reality they face. It's a reality we face. Sometimes you need an article, and the article, not that, yeah, it can be that you simply do not have access to it because of your location around the globe or your position within the organization, and you need somebody who has clearance to obtain it for you. So just as we go about problems in our daily lives, when we face those challenges, we need to find our ways around it. When it comes to academic literature, sometimes it is not open access. So what it means is that you may have to pay to read it. We pay because it is valuable output. Somebody spent money to do it. Sometimes the society and the community pays for that, so it is put in the open, that is open access, so that you can freely access it. Sometimes the publishing house actually covers it and they use it to raise money for the cost of publishing it. Okay, so there are times you need to pay to get access to certain research outputs. So let us understand the value placed on existing knowledge. If knowledge were not relevant, you wouldn't place a value on it. In as much as society is striving hard to make certain knowledge open and free for free access, there are some that are yet not open that we may need to pay to have access to them. So that brings me back to what I mentioned earlier. If your research that you're going to conduct is relevant to warrant spending, warrant a budget, then it should be able, your stakeholders should be able to provide you with the means to buy or pay to have access to any information or any literature that you need to embark on your research. It is worrying. We wished every past research is an open source knowledge, such that we can contribute to knowledge without incurring extra cost or more cost in the future. Okay, so I understand your concern, but let's always find ways around it. You don't have access. You might have a friend who has a friend and a friend who can access it for you. As a zealous researcher, yours is to get hold of that access, get the information anyhow. Okay, so I admit it's a challenge, but it is something that we should work around. Thank you. I hope your question is answered.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, okay. So we just want to define literature right. So it is essentially an argument. And what we mean by that is, it uses relevant literature to determine the value of your research work. You see, by critically analyzing the perspectives of those who have researched on the idea or the concept you want to study, by analyzing the context in which they carried out or they conducted the research, even the methodology and the focus they had for that study, you are able to, at the end of the day, come out with certain lapses, okay, or certain ambiguities that your research will have to address. And by so doing, you are adding up to what we already know. And that's what we call about, that's what we talk about contribution. You are adding to knowledge. You are helping us understand what we thought we understood even better. Okay. So what should it demonstrate? It shouldn't just demonstrate that you have read, but what should it demonstrate? It should be an argument. So it should demonstrate that you have a sound appreciation of the relevant literature on your research topic. You have a sound appreciation. You should understand what people were doing when they were what they were doing when they researched on those topics. What they limited their research to do, the context in which they conducted the research, the methodological approach they used, so that you can have your own opinion how to improve knowledge from their work. So before you can do that, it means you must do a careful search and selection of what to read. So you are researching on a particular topic, you must look for publications on those topics, but information out there is plenty. Is it everything you read? Garbage in, garbage out. With literature review, if you review garbage, you get a garbage literature review. So what it means is that you must know what articles to read, where to look for them. If you go to the wrong market, you buy the wrong products. If you go to the right market, you have stand a chance of buying the right products. So is it any article published, even if it's on the topic, is it any published in any journal that you have to read? No. You must know the sources where you can get a peer-reviewed article to read to make up your literature section. You must have knowledge of where to look for and what to look for, so that you can read just that which is relevant. So literature review should also demonstrate that you can critically analyze existing research. If you just read the summaries of their research and put it together, that becomes you are only summarizing what we know. But what do you think about what we know? What we think we know? What do you think about it? What is your take on it? So you understand why we are saying literature is an argument. You search for people or for articles that are well written and are published in recognized journals, so they are credible. Now, beyond that, when you are reading these articles published from credible journals or sources or outlets, you are critically analyzing the work they did to question, is this all we can say about this phenomenon? Is this all there is to this phenomenon? Could other factors also influence the relationship that has been established? Why are some finding positive relationship and others are finding negative relationships? Why are others finding no relationship at all? What is the conclusion we are making from this? So your critical analysis of the existing articles or research is very important. So anybody reading your literature should see how you are critically even analyzing people's conclusions, people's findings, and people's methodology and all that. Now, literature should also demonstrate that you are able to synthesize disparate work into a coherent whole. Remember, you have searched a lot of articles and selected to read. Your ability to, at the end of the day, synthesize everything, every knowledge about the topic you are interested in from all these different research outputs into a story, into a coherent whole, that there is logical flow in your literature review is very important. So your literature section should demonstrate, in addition to your sound appreciation of literature and critical analysis of existing texts, you should be able to put all that into a complete story that makes logical sense to the reader. So at the end of the day, you should be able to demonstrate why your research topic is useful and helps advance existing knowledge. If you have actually demonstrated appreciation of existing literature, critically analyzed the existing knowledge and synthesize it, then you will find some loopholes, what we call gaps, that your research should seek to build on, to contribute. Then we then say your topic has a theoretical contribution or makes a contribution to knowledge. Okay, so practically what we do in literature review, essentially we break it into about 3 parts. Okay, usually the first part is about conceptual review, where you begin to review definitions and explanations to the key phenomena in your topic. So like the topic we took initially, we have a concept like customer-oriented behavior. Then the question will be, what is customer-oriented behavior? How have past research defined customer-oriented behavior? In what context did they define it? Okay, in our study that we are going to conduct, how should we also define customer-oriented behavior? You do the same thing for supply chain collaboration. What is it? How has it been defined by different experts in the field? In what context was it defined? And how should we, given the context of our research today, define supply chain collaboration? And you do the same thing for operational efficiency. So try to define your key concepts by drawing on and analyzing and critically analyzing existing definitions from prior researchers. That aspect of your study is called the conceptual review. You try to define your concepts and narrow it down to the context of your study. Now, usually the next logical step is what we call theoretical review, where you examine how past research has drawn on certain theories or certain sets of logics, okay, to explain the relationship between the variables of interest in your topic. For instance, just as we had a discussion in the illustration from the previous pages about the interplay between supply chain collaboration and customer-oriented behavior in enhancing operational efficiency. Your knowledge of how prior studies have used existing theories or certain logics to explain how these variables are related is what we are talking about here. That's what we call the theoretical review. So you review the types of theories, demand theory, whatever, RBV, dynamic capability theory, all those theories, they provide logics for explaining why certain things are related, certain phenomena or concepts or variables are related. So you want to understand what is the logic for connecting 2 or 3 or more variables, or what is the logic for explaining why certain things occur or certain happenings occur. Okay, that is what we call the theoretical review. So at the end of the day, when you have reviewed the theories that have been used to explain the variables in your topic to research, you may now come to a conclusion what theory or what logic you are selecting to explain the relationships you are proposing in your study. And a third section or broader section of writing out your literature or conducting your literature review is what we call the empirical review. So remember I mentioned a conceptual review, theoretical review, and then empirical review. With empirical review, you want to systematically collate studies that have gone to the field to collect data, to analyze, and to write their conclusions. You want to look at the findings they obtained. You want to organize the findings and compare and see, is there consistency in the findings? If there is no consistency in the findings, what is causing the inconsistency? Is it context specific, such that studies conducted in maybe Europe or North America seem to find there seem to be a pattern in their findings different from studies conducted in China, Asia, or Africa? Okay, so at the end of the day, the empirical analysis of existing studies will help you know, will help you pick a clue what is being missing in our current knowledge or in terms of current research, so that you can pick on as a justification for your study and hence the contribution for your study. Any questions so far? So there might not be a real definition for what literature is, but certain rules applies here. So it's exactly 3 o'clock. We will take our break and resume on time to continue our discussion for the day. Is that okay? We will stop here, take your break. Let me look at when are we supposed to resume? In 30 minutes time. It's important. Let's take that 30 minutes break and synthesize what we have discussed already. When we come back, we'll continue from here. All right. Thank you. So our senior colleague, Dr. Suman, has put some information in the chat page. So do well to look at them with regards to obtaining literature for your research, okay? So read from the chat page also, okay? The rigor, the scientific research will go through everything that is published in these popular presses that you will want to use in your research. So when you are using them, make sure you select the well-recognized ones that have good reputation. And even when you are using them, since the content does not go through the rigorous research process, it is best used to illustrate your background, the background of your research. Okay. And then we have other documents or articles from practitioner-oriented articles. Okay, like you can get magazines from McKinsey, PricewaterhouseCoopers, and yes, they undertake industry research and they write their reports to suit or to address managers and industry practitioners. You may use their metrics, their information to back up a claim you are making in your research background, okay? But you want to use these quite sparingly, not to make any logical arguments. You pick your evidence of the existence of a problem in the market, a problem in an economy, or a manifestation of a problem in an industry from these sources, okay? For instance, you want to substantiate the problem of market for fresh produce like tomatoes and okra in Ghana. If you want to substantiate this as a problem that needs practitioners and policy attention, in writing your research, in the background, you try to illustrate the vivid manifestation of the absence of a good market for these fresh produce. And sometimes you pick this evidence from newspaper publications that illustrate or that talks about instances where farmers had a bounty harvest and they had to drink the poison they use on their farms to die because of the bounty harvest from every farm. The prices for tomato has dropped so low that they cannot pay back the loans they took from the banks. So that becomes a story you can get from newspapers to buttress the point or the claim you are making in your background that there is a problem when it comes to market for fresh produce in the country. Okay. I hope that went well. All right. Then literature means research studies. In essence, when we talk about literature in the context of research, we mean published research articles, other studies that have gone through the same or similar scientific rigor as you are going to go through to produce the output. They are the ones we look at, and they include journal articles. So if you go to the chat page, you will see some of the outlets my colleague Dr. Isuman posted there for your consumption. And then we have academic books or monographs. And then this does not mean textbooks. I mean the academic books and monographs, they don't mean textbooks. Textbooks are not necessarily based on research. We collect ideas from multiple sources and use them to prepare a manual for teaching a course, okay? But there are what we refer to as academic books. Mostly, they are a collection of related research publications that seeks to address a particular issue in a particular sector or in a particular field of study or in a particular industry or practice. So you pick that research or academic book and you see that every chapter is an actual research publication. Okay, so those books are accepted, but not the textbooks we see like a textbook like a corporate strategy, something in corporate strategy, or a textbook in accounting and finance, or a textbook in marketing, a textbook in HR. No, not those ones. All right. So there are also practitioner journals that focuses on articles that address practitioners' needs. So they look at issues or trends in certain industries like the aviation or in automobile or in accounting and finance or things like that, okay? And then there are also, so the general textbooks, you may read textbooks just to have an appreciation of the boundaries or the frontiers of a particular area of inquiry or topic you are interested in, but not to cite them. Occasionally, you may cite some of them, but you do as much as possible to move away from dwelling on textbooks for discussion in your literature. You may read to get an initial broad knowledge about the areas, and then you can follow up with actual research publications that highlight those things vividly. Textbooks should not generally be used as the main body, okay? Okay, so let me ask, why shouldn't we use textbooks in our literature review? Can someone try to explain, give us, yes, why should textbooks and news article publications not be used so much in your literature review? Can someone try to, based on what we have just talked about, can someone try to summarize that? Why shouldn't they be used? Or if they will be used, they should be used sparingly. Why that caution? Does any of you remember what I said? why should we limit our use of newspaper publications and textbooks in our literature review? Why should we limit their usage? I've given you an exam question, so try and bring out your, okay, yeah. All right.
One of the things you mentioned was they don't go through the rigorous review that literature reviews do. Sometimes it might be just a coalition of ideas from certain people and they put it together to present it. So you cannot really trust what they are saying all the time. So the review that literature reviews normally go through are lacking in most textbooks and news items.
Thank you very much. I think there was another hand. If you can also bring your submission, so we can. That's very true. All right. Thank you.
That was my hand, but then I think, hello.
Yeah. Obed?
I said that was my, yes, sir. That was my hand, but then I think I was going to say what you just said, because they did not go through that rigorous scientific methods.
All right.
Yes, you're right in it. Sure.
Okay. And most textbooks are outdated. They were written long ago. And sometimes the knowledge in them are they do no longer hold. We have moved on. Things have changed. Gen Z, Gen X and Gen Z, things have really changed from those things we learned in some textbooks long ago. So if you want to rely on them to make an argument today, you might even falter. Okay? All right. So most of times textbooks are outdated. When it comes to these newspaper publications too, they could be gossips. They could be anecdotal statement without strong empirical backing. Okay. So you should be careful how you use them, if you have to use them at all. All right. Okay. So there are certain books you can use if they are research, if the book is based on research. So like the one you see on the screen, I think it's a collation of research publications on a specific stream of literature. So they put it together, and every chapter you see is a research publication, it's a research article. So those ones you can use them. So that's an example. So other public sources include the newspapers and magazines, which we have talked about how to use them. Okay. Government publications, like from Ghana Statistical Services. And then you can even look at a bigger organization like the World Bank database and all those stuff, right? A registered general department also have information about all registered businesses and their types and size and other stuff like that. Then we have standards and codes of practice for certain sectors or industries, okay? And then we have company publications, their annual reports, their codes, their manuals, or even if you go to their website, their home, their social media sites or pages, you can also get information about them. All right. So there is this press called The Economist. Is well known, and they are known for publishing good stuffs. So sometimes when you have to use even newspapers, you want to even use the well-recognized newspapers that are known to be credible. So in Ghana, if you want to take information from news outlets, which news outlets would you consider as very formal and of good reputation, that you can cite them and people can believe in whatever you are talking about? Can you mention any of the news outlets in Ghana that you can use? I think I mentioned some of them earlier. So like the Business and Financial Times, BFT, is good. And then I don't know if you can say Ghana Web, but like I said, make sure whatever news outlet you are using is known to have a good reputation. Okay. And even when you are using, use them sparingly. But the real literature we're talking about are the publications in peer-reviewed journals, okay? And then research books. All right. Okay. So what is the role of literature review? What role does it play? Yeah. You want to speak?
About the case.
I'm telling you it's about the case. When your phone hits, it will lag. That's what I'm telling you, the case. When's the last time you saw me use the case?
Sorry, please. Well, if you're not speaking to the class, kindly mute yourself. All right. What's the role of literature review? It helps you, the researcher, to identify important gaps in the existing literature. We have talked about this, so this is just for your information so that you can appreciate it when you want to examine why do you even do literature review in the first place. It helps you, the researcher, to identify gaps in the existing literature that you should fill or you should contribute to fill it. It helps you to determine whether a research problem has already been conducted or researched earlier by other researchers or not. The reason you are searching the literature is to ensure that the problem you are thinking about has not been done already. It has been done already, then there's no need for you to commit time, energy, and resources to conduct it. So if you remember this point, you have 2 points. If you can know whether your study has not been done by earlier researchers, then it helps you to identify the gaps. And literature review process also helps the researcher to identify key variables and relationships. I explained earlier about the conceptual review, where you are able to identify the variables and define them. And the theoretical review, that helps you logically establish relationships between the variables. And actually, the empirical review helps you to know what has been found about those relationships. And it helps the researcher to position their work in the existing scholarly discussions on an issue. Having been able to critically analyze existing literature and synthesize them together, you are able to identify what is lacking, what we need more emphasis on, what has not been explained that we need to explain, what has not been considered in the discussion that we need to bring into the picture, where the discussion has not gone that we need to take the discussion to. That becomes your gap and how your study will further knowledge, existing knowledge. And it helps you to demonstrate why your research topic is useful. That is to crown it all. And so what? Okay, if we conduct the study and in this manner, in that manner, we are able to go beyond this basic level to an advanced way of looking at the situation at hand. Who cares? Why is it important? Okay. So you're able to answer those questions through your extensive literature review. So what it means is that before you even establish your research topic firmly, you need to have gone to the literature to read. Before you can have a solid research topic that makes theoretical contribution. So this brings our attention to the fact that although the research problem, the research process is itemized the way we saw in our previous session, the process is iterative. You start one, you even jump to the next, and having gotten what you need, then you can jump back to perfect the problem definition. So it is iterative, forth and back. Sometimes you even go to the field and you may need to come back to revise your research topic based on the initial things you learned from the field. So let's bear that in mind. In practice, research is iterative. You go forth and you come back, and that helps you redirect your work going forward. Okay. What your literature review should contain. So I mentioned about the conceptual review where you define your variables. and you draw conclusions from those definitions so that you can come out with your unique definition to suit the focus of your study and the context of your study. Just to illustrate a simple thing for you that everybody can relate with, like definition of gender. With the trend of the world today, if you go to the Western world, definition of gender is now broad. But you come to our part of the world where we still stick to what we know from our fathers. The definition of gender is narrow, male and female. Elsewhere, you are going to have a variety of classifications that I even lose count of them. So, assuming you want to talk about gender, definition of gender proposed or used in other studies outside the context of where you want to conduct your study cannot be used in your context because those categories of gender or classification of gender might not apply in your context. So you will have to adapt the definition to suit your context. So you may have talked about definitions of gender in the Europe, in the US, in Russia, in Asia, but when you come to Ghana and Kumasi, you may now want to narrow the definition to what we accept as gender classification. Okay, so that is it. All right, Yao, go ahead.
Yeah, so I was just thinking about that when you brought it up. So in our political climate, our political landscape, a lot of these articles that are printed out are sometimes, because they are mostly backed by some of these institutions, sometimes the research become biased. So how do we meander through this situation so that we ourselves, when we are doing our research, we don't become biased based on our background or cultural preference? How do we then do that?
Okay, so that is a controversial one, I must say, because if the one funding, but it is understandable. You see, if the one funding the research understands the context in which you are conducting it, or if they understand research well, it shouldn't be an issue. The issue is that sometimes they are trying to push an agenda, okay? So they want you to be open to other forms of gender. That one, there isn't much you can do about it, okay? I'm trying to let us understand that do not take the explanation, the example I cited out of context. It is quite a delicate issue when you're talking about this gender issue, okay? But you are conducting the study in Ghana when Ghana has not accepted those other forms of gender. What it means is that if you go to the field, what the people know is male and female. This should not be difficult for your sponsor who is coming from another country who see other forms of gender to be worried, okay? So as a researcher, it becomes your duty to explain that in terms of the empirical setting, if your data is going to be collected in Ghana and Ghana alone, this is a situation in Ghana. Gender is recognized to be male and female and nothing more. So to conduct this study, we need to adapt the definition and its operationalization this way, okay? So there is a broader definition of gender, which in your literature review, you will demonstrate. You will demonstrate the various definitions of gender, and the generic definition of gender will be the identification of an individual in terms of sex, what they belong to. You get me? But towards the end of your discussion, where you are zooming into the empirical setting where you are going to conduct your study, what do they see as gender? What will be their interpretation of gender? Then you put that definition there. So even your sponsor reading your document knows that you have acknowledged the general definitions, the differences in the perceptions of gender from different locations, but for your specific context where you are going to conduct your empirical study, this is what gender means to them. They won't have issues with you. Is that okay?
Okay.
Sure. All right. All right. So next is to discuss the key relationships that have been studied involving your variables. And that is where you look at the logic they use to establish the relationships, and then the empirical findings they obtained or they reported on those relationships. So that's when I talked about the theoretical review and then also the empirical review. So at the end of the section of your literature review, your concluding sections should be able to indicate clearly why you think your research is an improvement on what has already been done. So let's take an example like the relationship between customer-oriented behavior and operational efficiency. It could happen that by the time you finish your study, you observe that the effect of customer-oriented behavior on operational efficiency has not always been positive. There are studies who have reported negative relationship. Then you ask yourself, why? So you begin to analyze the studies. Those who found negative relationship, are those studies peculiar to a particular region or continent or people or market, whether advanced or informal market? Okay, you begin to ask, those are the analysis you make in the literature. So you are able to understand that, one, the findings are not consistent. Okay, what might have explained or accounted for that? Okay, we noticed that those studies who find positive effects are usually conducted in informal sector and as developing economies. And then those who tend to find positive relationship are conducted in advanced economies. So the question is, could the differences in the economic background or economic power be an explanation? And what is that difference? Is it coming from the a cultural orientation? Is it coming from poverty or economic situation? Or what is really causing it? What is the actual difference between these two group of economies that is causing the differences in the relationship between customer-oriented behavior and operational efficiency? Those are the questions you ask yourself. And having been able to establish that, you now begin to tell how your study will help explain why those differences exist, so that we cannot generally conclude that customer-oriented behavior will always lead to operational efficiency. But it does that in this context because of ABCD. And your study can prove that it does not have positive effect on operational efficiency in developing the economy because of ABCD reasons. So that is what we are looking at. At the end of the literature review, your synthesis, you yourself should be able to indicate clearly that my study makes a contribution. What is it? Because I'm able to identify ABCD gaps, ABCD inconsistencies, ABCD lack of clarity in the literature, which in my study, I'm going to bring out that clarification, okay? I'm going to resolve that inconsistency, okay? Or I'm going to fill that void. So that is, at the end of your literature review, you should have a section that clearly spells out how your study is going to build on the existing study to increase our knowledge. All right. So in your literature to having identified the gaps or the theoretical issues that your study is going to contribute to, you need to state or make or propose specific hypotheses, propositions, or questions. So you can ask a question that leads to an inquiry that answers or that resolves the gap you have identified in the literature. Or you can also make a hypothesis. A hypothesis is a proposition, a tentative statement that can be falsified. That can a tentative statement that you can collect data to analyze to either confirm or disconfirm. Using the example we cited earlier, you may choose to say that customer-oriented behavior may not necessarily drive operational efficiency directly. Then you can go ahead to propose that the effect of customer-oriented behavior on operational efficiency may be intervened by or may be conveyed through supply chain collaboration. So what you are saying is that you have studied, you have examined the studies that have looked at the relationship between customer-oriented behavior and operational efficiency. And you realize that the results are not always consistent. Some find positive, some find negative relationship, some find no relationship at all. And you are trying to say that having reasoned well around the whole topic, having critically analyzed the studies from literature, you would think that customer-oriented behavior should not necessarily have any bearing on operational efficiency. Operational efficiency has to do with you spending less resources in your operations, making a lot of cost savings in your operations, okay? It could be time, it could be money, it could be resources. All right. Now, how does a company being customer-oriented alone makes them efficient? It doesn't make sense. Maybe being customer-oriented should lead the organization to engage in certain practices that are really related to or actually related to efficiency. And from our example and how we break it down into smaller specific questions, we took the position that supply chain collaboration can be a direct outcome of customer-oriented behavior. Since we are thinking about always satisfying the customer rights, looking at the customer and producing or offering the customer products and services that best suit their needs, we know that we don't produce everything ourselves. We source for materials, we source for parts and supplies from other members in the supply chain. So let's engage in a close collaboration with them so that we can obtain the finest of materials, the finest of supplies, and not just that, but to be able to supply them always on time when we need it at the least possible cost possible so that we can produce product A and B that meets the customer's requirement and still charge very little for it. So for us to be efficient, operationally efficient, we may need to ride on the back of our suppliers, our supply chain partners. So we need to team up with them, collaborate with them, exchange ideas, build trust, share knowledge, share resources so that we can achieve economies of scale, so that we can be efficient in our output or our operations. So you, with your knowledge from textbook, with your knowledge from theory, with your knowledge from the articles you have read, have learned how customer-oriented behavior should lead to something first, which is supply chain collaboration, which will then lead to operational efficiency. You have at the back of your mind, through the theoretical lenses, how customer-oriented behavior would logically lead to the company engaging in supply chain collaboration, and how that collaborative activities can actually lead into operational efficiency. but you have not tested this with data yet. This is a logical, critical thinking you are doing. So you put a hypothetical statement that you suggest that the relationship between customer-oriented behavior and operational efficiency is mediated or intervened by supply chain collaboration. Now, this statement becomes something you are going to test with empirical data to see whether that claim can be established, can be confirmed in the empirical data or not. So it is not a definitive statement. It is a hypothetical statement. It is a proposition that can be falsified. Okay, all right. So this is where you begin to draw specific arguments from the literature review undertaking to help you establish why you think customer-oriented behaviors will lead to something like supply chain collaboration, and also why you think supply chain collaboration will lead to operational efficiency. The logic and the mechanisms that come at play is what we call the argument, okay? So you make a tentative statement, and then you argue why you think that statement will hold. Now, the next 10 will be to go and collect data and validate that statement you have made. So note that the hypothesis you draw should help to achieve your research objectives or answer your research questions. So initially, we had our broad objective or statement question, and we broke it down to specific questions. Each of those specific questions set a specific hypothesis for each of them, such that you can collect data to test, to confirm or disconfirm each of those hypotheses. Okay, all right. So your evaluation of the hypothesis at the end of your data analysis is what will make you, what will enable you to answer yes or no to the managerial questions that triggered the study in the beginning. Now, this brings us to what we call theory development. Now, before we continue with theory, let me ask from you, what is theory? I don't need a golden definition, but when you hear the word theory, what comes to mind? Any response from you? We have all been using the word theory. We even say university education is all theory, it's not practical. When they come out, we don't see anything. Everything is theory. Enough about the theories, let's go practical. So when we use that word in our everyday language, what do we mean? Let's try to be practical so that we can help ourselves have a change of mind about what theory is. Define it appropriately and use it appropriately in our daily balance. So what is theory? Any assistance? Any help? To me, in my PhD study, one of the biggest transformations for me is my understanding of theory. When the concept was explained to me, I really appreciated it. Yeah, Abuaji.
Okay, sir. What I think about theory is, like you said, for me, it sounds like something like a format.
A format, okay.
Yes, that's what I think tonight.
All right, thank you. Any other opinion about theory? What is theory? What when it comes to mind, what really comes when you hear theory, what really comes to mind? Just put it forth. Formality, format, okay. Yes, Jeremy.
Yeah, so for me, when we talk about theory, I look at it from a point of a logical explanation to a situation or a phenomenon.
Phenomenon. Very good. Yeah. Okay. All right. Thank you. Let's take one more, then we can continue. Any different opinion from the two that have come? Yeah.
Personally, I would say probably a statement about some facts that you are trying to put across.
Okay. So you formulating a statement about certain facts that you want to put across. Okay. Reality. That's good.
Yes.
All right.
All right.
If you have more, I can take you. So if there is some more, you bring them. You realize that when we put all these together, we will have the correct interpretation of theory. So if you have some more, you can bring it out. Somebody who has not spoken today. Should I call names? Hey, Bridget, my daughter. What do you think about theory? Bridget. Hello, Bridget, are you with us? What is your take on theory? What comes to mind when you hear the word theory? Why is Bridget staring some banku? Let me go to someone else. Emanuela. What's your take on theory? When you hear the word theory, what comes to mind? I guess Emanuela is checking the sheet. So let's go on. All right. So you are all right to some extent. When we put all together, we get the true meaning of theory. In theoretical development or in developing theory, or in building theory, what we are trying to do is that we want to understand reality. We want to reconstruct reality in our mind so that we can take that pattern. So the first person said format, okay? So we want to learn and observe a pattern, and that established pattern can be applied to new situations or different situations, okay? But we learn those from reality. There is one common theory, controversial theory, that we all know, evolution theory. And you ask yourself, what does it seek to do? It seeks to explain our origin as humans. It's as simple as that. It is not a fact. A theory is not necessarily a fact. It is an observation of phenomena, and we try to establish a logic or make a logical conclusion why what we are observing happens. So evolution theory is trying to explain where we came from, why we exist, and perhaps where we are going, what we are made of. Okay, so any theory you know, it is trying to explain why certain things happen, why certain things may be related. That is what theory tries to do. So theory is deduced from our logical analysis of things around us, phenomena around us, so that we pick that logical relationship and we can apply it in new circumstances. When something is happening that involves entities or concepts that are related to or that behave in a similar way to the actual thing we observe and learn the logic from, we can apply it to it. Okay, so it's all about a logical construction about phenomena around us. So theory looks at what our actual behavior in real life and try to deduce why we do the things we do, why A is related to B or B is not related to C. Then that logical explanation becomes what we call a theory. And then we can pick that theory, that logic, to explain other similar phenomena. It helps us to pick knowledge from one occurrence and apply it to a different occurrence. Okay, so in education, most of the things we do is about theory building, because that is how we build knowledge. That is how we understand why things happen, why things are associated or related. When we know this, and when we face a real situation, we know that given A, B might happen. Given C, D might happen. So yes, you say in education, it's all about theory. If you understand the meaning of theory, you will understand that it's important. You cannot possibly learn all the possible and all the actual things that will happen on the job. So what do? Okay, based on our knowledge of what has been happening on the jobs, let's deduce theories, let's deduce standards for interpreting phenomena when they occur in real life. So we learn a pattern of thinking, a logic that helps us deduce that should A happen, B will happen. Or A and B are related in this way, such that if A increases, B might also increase. So that if you're in an organization and in real life and you see A increasing, you know that probably the next thing that will be affected is component C. So if you see that the government has come to read budget and has increased taxes in certain areas, you definitely know that tax policies have everything to do with what we wear, what we eat, what we consume, what we import. So if you're a businessman, you begin adjusting your prices because you know the next time you go for supplies, you won't buy them the same price you bought them the other time. Okay, so that is what theory does. Let's try to define it more formally. Theory defines a concept. In theory, it has two basic components: concepts or phenomena. Okay, and then it has the relationship that underline those phenomena or concepts. So in theory, we define a concept as an image or symbolic representation of an abstract idea. For instance, the example we cited from the beginning, that is the interplay between supply chain collaboration and customer-oriented behavior, and is how it enhances operational efficiency. Any of the relationships we established constitute a theory, such that we have components, and those components are the concepts in it. The concepts here are something like customer-oriented behavior is a concept. It's not something you see with your eye. It's not something you can go and buy on the shelf. Something like supply chain collaboration, it is not a product. It is not something you see sitting somewhere that you can go and pick and inventory it. Operational efficiency is also the same, but it's a mental construction. For instance, if you take operational efficiency, it is an image we have in our mind about an operations that spends less resources. It's as simple as that. Customer-oriented behavior is an abstract notion in our head that we construct around an organization who is concerned about their customers and behave as such. Their behavior depicts that they are so much concerned about satisfying their customers. They are so much concerned about delighting their customers. They are so much concerned about impressing their customers. That attitude, that behavior, when we label it as such, it becomes an abstract idea that needs to be defined. So that component from theory called concept, another author also defines it as concepts are the components of theory which conveys the abstract ideas within a theory. They also see a concept as a complex mental formulation of experience from reality, from what has been happening around us. In other words, A concept is an abstract notion of reality, as simple as that. Now, let's build it up to coming out with a theory. A starting point of every good research is theory. Remember, we said you identify your broad statement, break down them into specific questions, and those questions presupposes you take a position in establishing relationships. So just from the literature review, we said that having established your literature and clearly stated how your study is contributing to knowledge, you are also supposed to make or formulate hypotheses, tentative statements, take a position, how you think the constructs or the concepts in your study will be related, against which you will collect data to test. Now, what we are saying is that in order to make that tentative statement, you should have examined or come out with theories that will help you make a logical explanation why you think the variables in your study will be related in the manner in which you have proposed. So in other words, without good logic, without good theory, you may not be able to start a good research. I know this might be debatable because we have learned from our past that some studies begin with theory, others do not begin with theory. You will explain that later. In either case, every study needs a good logic before you begin. If certain variables were not related, why are you even studying them in the first place? And if they are related, what makes you think they are related? You should be able to establish that logic first before you even proceed, okay? All right, so theories come from relevant secondary sources such as books, journals, industry reports, government reports. So as we established earlier, your literature review should also contain what we call the theoretical review. So from the materials you read to construct your literature review, you will find theories in them. Practically, studies that have collected empirical data to validate their hypothesis will normally draw on theories. So you will find some of the plausible theories that have been used in related studies that you can draw knowledge from. Sometimes you may have to go away from your area of study. You might be studying marketing. You might have to go to, and maybe your study is about consumer purchasing behavior and stuff like that. You might have to go to psychology to borrow from some of the human behavior theories they have there to draw on the logics to apply in your study, okay? So when you have concepts and the logical arguments that relate the concepts together, then you have what we call an analytical model, okay? So an analytical model consists of variables or concepts and their relationships. So this is, so we have talked about analytical model, about theory, and then concepts. Now, your analytical model may be referred to as a theoretical model or a conceptual framework. You will come across these two terminologies from now going forward very often. Theoretical framework and conceptual framework sometimes are used interchangeably, okay? But when you consider in between the lines, usually theoretical framework is used when your analytical model is explained by one body of theory, okay? When your whole analytical model is explained by one theory. But when your analytical model draws on several theories, several logics, several different logics to explain your entire study, then we call it a conceptual framework. Okay. So just a summary of it. One theory used to explain a problem, that's Newton's law of motion. If you studied your analytical model drew on just the Newton's law of motion to explain or to make an argument, then you can call your analytical framework a theoretical framework. But where you draw on multiple theories or theoretical lenses, then it becomes a conceptual framework. We will have some illustrations as we go forward, so let's not waste time here. So what is its purpose? Theoretical frameworks or analytical frameworks seeks to provide evidence linking concepts to concepts. For instance, how is customer-oriented behavior related with supply chain collaboration? The logical argument you will make to establish why they are related in a particular way is what we call the theory. So the theoretical framework part of your study helps you to provide critical logic that link your concepts or your variables. And it helps you to build hypotheses or propositions. It is this logical analysis of how if a company is customer-oriented or exhibit customer-oriented behavior, how does that lead to they engaging in supply chain collaboration? I explained earlier that a plausible explanation or logic can be that organizations do not exist in isolation. They depend on suppliers and distributors and transporters and even funds providers like banks and commercial banks and even suppliers who even supply them on credit. That is supply chain financing. So your business does not exist on an island. It depends on other businesses to be able to create the value to satisfy your customer. So a company that exhibits customer-oriented behavior, that is wanting to satisfy their customer very well or at all costs, will seek to bring on board anybody who has or who makes an input to their business operations. And this will include their suppliers, their transporters, and all those people and manufacturers. So they will want to team up with them, share with them the kind of output they want, how cheap they want it, because their customers are price sensitive and all that, and yet they want high quality. So how they can help them supply them with good quality materials and yet not too expensive so that they can meet their customers' requirements. So at the end of the day, a company that is highly customer-oriented will end up engaging in a lot of collaboration with its supply chain partners so that they can together create high quality but affordable at affordable prices for their consumers. So that is my perspective, how I think customer-oriented behavior can lead to supply chain collaboration. And that logic I am giving must make sense, must be sound, okay? And there can be an existing theory that can help us establish or confirm this logic that I'm making. Sometimes there may not be an existing theory with a name, but my ability to logically explain, give a sound reason why, a compelling reason why, if a firm is customer-oriented, will most likely lead to them engaging in supply chain collaboration is what we call the theory, okay? And this explanation is what can enable me establish a hypothesis that says that the high levels of customer orientation will most likely be associated with high levels of supply chain collaboration. That becomes a hypothesis. All right. So if you do your literature review very well and your conceptual model, by doing those and your model, you end up with a theory, because your literature review will help you with understanding existing theory that can help you establish the logic I just talked about. It may even give you some empirical findings that will help you cite examples where concepts related to what you are studying were related in the way you are proposing. Okay, then in that way, you end up with what we call a theory. So let's give an example. Let's say that we are researching the impact of internet usage on attitude towards internet security. Okay, how does the extent to which somebody uses internet affect how they think about security in the internet environment? Their attitude about security when it comes to internet stuff. Okay. So once we've done a good literature review, we have a good idea of the state of research on this research theme. Those establishing positive relationship, negative relationship, or no relationship at all. Then we have an idea of whether our research team or topic has been done before. Now we can tell whether what we were thinking about initially has been done or not. If it has been done, then the question is, what is left undone that we can incorporate or inculcate in our current topic to make our topic useful? If it has not been done, you say, hallelujah, then we have a case. Now, we also become clear about relevant questions that are asked, or what relevant questions to ask, knowing that our idea has not been studied before. Okay. So the subsequent thing is we can now build a model of how we think internet usage can affect attitude towards internet security. So with all the knowledge we have obtained from literature, we now have to build a model, a mental construction, to show how we think internet usage will affect attitude towards internet security. So can somebody try? No answer is wrong, no answer is correct. All answers are acceptable. How do you think internet usage will affect attitude towards internet security? Will high usage lead to positive attitude towards internet security, or vice versa? Then you try to explain, give us a logical explaining why you think why you take that position. Let me clarify again. We want to look at the relationship between internet usage and attitude towards internet security. I'm breaking it down a little to make it more easy for us. So there are two possibilities, or even three. There are two. Let's limit it to, at this stage, we know that they are related, but how? So the two possibilities are that internet usage, when it goes up, attitude towards internet security will be positive. The other alternative is that when internet usage goes up, attitude towards internet security will be negative, or the user will tend to have more negative attitude towards internet security. So I've given you two possible scenarios. In simple terms, what I'm trying to say is that the first one, internet usage and attitude towards internet security are positively related. Or high internet usage will have positive influence on attitude towards or will lead to positive attitude towards internet security. And then the second option is high internet usage will lead to negative attitude towards internet security. Just take one of these positions and try to give us why you think it will happen that way. Try and give a logical argument why your position will hold. That is why we call theory building. So can somebody try? Let's have two people try each of the alternatives. So any hands? Hello, hello. Is anyone trying for us? And let me just say this in passing, that the kind of questions I'm asking, trust me, for your exams, that is how they will come. They are so practical. You'll be asked to demonstrate your knowledge of what we are studying. So sometimes they come in this form. So let's try how we respond to something like that, okay, whilst we are in class, so that we can correct ourselves and get used to it, because that's how you are going to, that's what you are going to see, okay? So will anybody try based on what we have just discussed? Just take one of those two positions and try to give us a sound logic why you think that position will hold before. I'll appreciate it if this time new members. Yes, Akwesi Ajiman, yeah.
Good afternoon. So I'm thinking that high internet usage will result in very high or positive attitude towards internet security, in that high usage will mean that the person has experience with the tools that he's dealing with, and then that would also have to translate into a positive attitude towards internet security.
That's good. So you establish more familiarity. You become more skilled in using the internet interfaces. You know the tempting sites not to go, the dangerous sites to visit. You know how people prey on others to steal their information and all those things. So the more you use the system, the more you become acquainted with the system and how to avoid any fraud or any scam, okay? So you tend to have that positive attitude towards internet security. Yes, the internet makes you vulnerable, but once you use it more and you understand your way around it, you can stay safe. So that is a very good argument. So that's what we call theory. You have identified concepts, that is internet usage. And the second concept is attitude towards internet security. Now, you are able to give a logical explanation, a sound reasoning why they will be positively related, saying that high internet usage will most likely result in positive attitude or more positive attitude towards internet security. That is very good. Can somebody also pick the opposite or the counter argument and also make a very compelling logic for us? So you see, research is a discussion. Somebody can look at it from this positive line. Others can also argue strongly from the positive and negative side. Okay, yeah, go ahead.
Okay, first of all, I agree with Kwesi. And the positive
yes.
side was advocates. So in this case, I think it's actually affects it negatively. The more the person uses internet, it affects him negatively. His attitude towards the internet security is negative. In that, sometimes the more you use it, you tend to realize that there are more vulnerabilities, and the solutions to them, there are people who can actually circumvent most of the solutions. So it tends to make you feel like there's no way you can still stop the very good people who can circumvent this security. So then why even try? Why not just ignore it and then just go your way? So sometimes you start to have that negative feeling towards this whole security of the internet, that you don't even want to try and protect yourself. Just do whatever you want, because you don't even trust the people who are providing the internet security in the first place.
Thank you. That's also wonderful. So you see, it is all about making a logical argument. That is theory. And you might think, how can the same thing be positive and the same thing be negative? That is what makes research so interesting. That's why we call it knowledge building. You discuss things from a disinterested perspective. What I mean by that is from an unbiased point of view. So if you were conducting this study, you don't just focus on the positive side. If you are really reasoning and being critical and analytical, you will also recognize that there are instances where the negative also hold. How would you know this? You would have known from the previous study that some found positive effects, some found negative relationship. And these are the two arguments that will hold for that thing to happen. Now, the question you're asking yourself is, under what circumstance or under what conditions can we, under what circumstance or conditions can we always expect a positive relationship? And under what circumstances or conditions would we always expect a negative relationship? Or through what mechanism can we always expect a positive relationship? Okay, so that becomes a contribution to make. So if I were the one reading, doing this study, and haven't heard from the two speakers, assuming they have published works on this, haven't read their work, now my contribution would be how to reconcile these two. So let me give my point of view on this issue. I might begin by saying that the relationship is positive. It's expected to be positive, citing the first person's logical argument. But I will introduce the second person's argument and even extend it further to say that sometimes it depends on the user. We are assuming that the more you use, the more you learn your way to avoid trouble. But it is not everybody who is able to learn their way out of trouble. Some people, the more they use, the more they become vulnerable. The more they are able to use the internet platform to achieve their goals, and they have not even seen, they become so reliant on it that they become addicted that they forget about the security issues, and by so doing, they end up facing some of these internet security, internet fraud, impersonation, and then even being targeted by like a serial killer or whatever, being preyed on the internet. So if somebody's experiences with this internet fraud and internet security issues increases as a result of their continuous usage of the internet, what do you think? They develop a negative attitude. Now we are coming to a point where we are saying that the user must possess certain qualities so that their increased usage of the internet will lead them to have a more positive attitude towards internet security. They must be the kind of users who know how to identify threats on the internet and to secure themselves against the threats from the internet. People who have the ability to learn, to quickly learn and secure themselves, will always have a positive attitude towards internet security. Sometimes it is not, has nothing to do with the ability to learn about these security features. Sometimes it just has to do with a mental orientation. From just by looking at the examples our two colleagues gave us, especially the second person submission, you seeing most of these loopholes from which predators can prey on you on the internet will make you have a negative attitude towards internet. It is a mental orientation. So there are people who have a positive mental orientation. Being able to see them, they will translate into finding a way to avoid them. But somebody with a negative mental orientation, seeing them more means more problem, and they become worse. Sorry, how long was I gone?
You were explaining the second point. The people who used to have a negative mindset.
Yes. So let me, okay. Sharing my screen again. Okay. Yeah. So we're saying it could be the individual's mindset. All these, whether positive or negative relationship, could result from the individual's orientation, mental orientation, whether he has a positive mental orientation about things or a negative mental orientation. So this becomes a psychological variable that can explain why we find negative relationship or positive relationship between internet usage and attitude towards internet security. So like I was saying in the first place, somebody with a positive mental orientation, the more they use, the more they see the loopholes and learn to overcome them. So they tend to develop a more positive attitude towards internet security. Somebody with a negative mental orientation, the more they see those loopholes, the more they get worried, the more they get concerned, and they tend to develop a negative attitude towards internet security. So here our contribution will be explaining why the two can occur by identifying a common variable, which is the individual's mental orientation, it being either positive or what, negative. All right, so that is what we do when we are building theories. We are trying to learn why the things that happen around us happen the way they happen, how they are related. And when we learn from these things, it will help us to interpret other new things which comes our way, okay? All right. So, all right. So we are saying that this could be done, you could just make it up or use your intuition. Currently, what we did was through our intuition, but it was logical. It was sound, okay? So if you see make it up here, it doesn't mean you are just making up. What we just talked about, we all made it up, right? From our intuition, but it was logical. It is convincing. It is clear. It makes sense. So that's what we are talking about. Sometimes you may not have an existing theory like theory of demand that tells you the higher the price, the lower the quantity demanded or anything. You may not have an explicit theory with a name like that, but your ability to make these logical analogies and to link the two, just like we have done without citing any particular theory, is still theory building. Are we okay? All right. Or we could build a theory by using logical arguments and previous evidence from literature. So sometimes you may have found some prior evidence in literature that will help you back up that logical argument you are making, okay? So the components of theory, we have already mentioned this, so we are just showing them. A concept or construct. When a mental idea or an abstract idea or notion is identified and has not been defined for us to know its boundaries, it is called a concept. Love is a concept. Beauty is a concept. Customer-oriented behavior is a concept. Supply chain collaboration is a concept. It's an abstract notion. When we have defined it to give it a meaning that has boundaries. For example, if you take beauty, then you define beauty to be a spotless complexion with a round face and a pointed nose. That definition, when we have defined beauty to be a spotless complexion, body complexion, a round face with a pointed nose, then we have set the boundary to what we mean by beauty, and that becomes a construct. When we have defined an abstract notion, it becomes a construct. And now, that construct is not observable in a glance. When we disintegrate that definition we just defined, it means we are looking for a complexion that is spotless. So either an all dark color complexion or an all fair complexion. That becomes, so the complexion becomes one of the observations we have to make when we are trying to capture the construct beauty. The second observation would be the roundness of the face. Okay, so the more round the face is, then it adds to the more beautiful the person might be. Then the third observation we can make about our construct love beauty will be a pointed nose. So the more pointed nose you have, the more beautiful you might be. Okay, so those observable things about the construct is what we call variables. So sometimes in research, we use the terminologies concept, construct, and variables interchangeably. Now, where they appear in our theory will make them either independent or dependent. We'll explain this later. When we normally show relationships in our theoretical framework with arrows. For concepts or constructs or variables that arrows are protruding away from, we normally refer them as independent variables. And constructs or variables or concepts that an arrow is pointing to, we normally refer them as dependent variables. Okay, so we will learn more of these as we go forward. So a theory constitutes, it has two key components. One is the constructs or concepts of variables. Now the relationship established between them is what we call is the relationships. So a theory has concepts and what relationships. So we will see together. For instance, customer satisfaction, sales growth. These two are what we call constructs or variables. Now, the link between them, that is the relationship. The link that is established between them is the relationship. So the hypothesis is what spells out what we are suspecting will happen between customer satisfaction and sales growth. So you see there's a plus sign here. The plus sign tells us that we are suspecting that higher customer satisfaction will lead to higher sales growth, or customer satisfaction is positively related to sales growth. So the higher we achieve customer satisfaction, the higher our sales growth will be. So this whole thing you see here is a theory. It is a theoretical framework explaining the relationship between customer satisfaction and sales growth. And our conjecture is that higher customer satisfaction will lead to higher sales growth. Is that understood? That is why they normally call this a theoretical or a conceptual framework, because it has concepts, 1, 2, and the concepts are linked with a relationship. And in this case, we are proposing that it will be positive. So building a compelling argument for the relationship that exists between the two is what we call the theory building. Okay, and that is what we all demonstrated. Okay, that's good. So this is a more complex one, similar to the example we have been using from the previous session. So we have organizational creativity, and we are thinking that organizational creativity should lead to new product development performance. But we think that organizational creativity may not necessarily and directly result in new product development. Why? You can be creative and you still be hungry because you don't put your creativity into producing anything. So that organization can be creative and yet will not experience new product development performance because they did not channel their creativity into innovation processes, because it takes processes to create products to perform in the market. So if you are creative, let it transform into innovative processes that create new products. So you see, perhaps from the previous literature, organizational creativity has been linked to new product development, of which the results were mixed, positive, negative, not significant. A possible contribution we can make is that, no, we are not looking at it well. It is not just any creativity that should lead to new product development performance. The creativity should translate into being innovative about the processes that create the products before it can lead to the performance. So we introducing the mediator, which I normally refer to as, I sarcastically refer to as the betweener, as a mechanism through which organizational creativity drives new product development. By doing this, by explaining this relationship P1 and P2A and P2B, we have been able to make a compelling argument why organizational creativity may not lead to new product development directly, except when through process innovation. So we have added to knowledge. So this is theory building. All right. It can be more complex. Somebody who comes after me may say that, oh, if that's what you are saying, then there are different kinds of innovation. It is not only process innovation. There can be product innovation. There can be administrative innovation. So in order for organizational creativity to translate to higher new product development performance, then the creativity should manifest. It should translate into all these forms of innovations. Then all these forms of innovations together will drive new product development performance, which in turn will lead to long-term financial performance. So I want to hope that you are appreciating the conversation we are having this afternoon. All right. Data. Look at this. Theory, we said it identifies concepts which when defined, we get constructs, which when we have determined how to capture them in the real world, they become variables. They can be dependent and independent variables. Then there is relationships. When you go to the empirical setting to collect data, you collect data on the variables, whose parents are the constructs, whose abstract notions are the concepts. So we have come out with our theoretical framework or conceptual framework. So let me ask you, based on the the difference between what we term as conceptual framework and theoretical framework, I just want to show you that slide. Based on this slide, I'm going to put you through a small test. So let's go. What will you call this? Will you call this an analytical model, a theoretical model, or a conceptual model? Will you call this a theoretical framework or a conceptual framework? Any answers? Quick one. Anyone? So give me an answer and then we'll go on. We have 30 minutes to go. Please. Theoretical. Why? Because we will most probably draw on only one logic to explain them. Okay. How about this? It could be theoretical, it could be conceptual, right? Because there are many relationships to be explained and it may draw on multiple theories. The same as this one. It could be theoretical, it could be conceptual. But when the relationships are many like this, it is most likely to be conceptual, okay? But don't beat yourself so hard about trying to label it either conceptual or theoretical. We accept them anyway, okay? Only when we want to be too academic that we distinguish between the two. All right, so data. We want to distinguish between theory and data. Data is not theory. Okay?